RNA polymerase recognizes and binds to the promoter. Okay, talk to your neighbor, find it in your notes. There's a part of the polymerase that is responsible for recognizing and binding the promoter. It is called the sigma factor. Okay? Yep, check. Okay, so remember the polymerase is made up of a lot of different proteins, and one of those proteins is called the sigma factor. The sigma factor recognizes and binds the promoter. Okay. All right, so what I want you to see is that remember the -10 and the -35, they're referring to base pairs, right? So like +1 is the very first base of transcription. -10 is 10 bases upstream. Upstream, downstream, more terms for you to confuse. Upstream is up away from the transcription start site. Down is into going towards the place of transcription. Okay? So upstream, downstream. Okay? So notice that it matters where these promoter elements are. So they are at -10 and -35. And the reason why that's the case is that shown down here is the double helix. Notice that the -10 and the -35 are on the same face of the DNA. They are both on this upper side of the helix. Okay? That's important because as a protein, so this is a two-dimensional structure, but think of a helix, a three-dimensional helix, right? A coil. Right? If the sequence was here and here, a protein won't be able to recognize that because it can scan only one side of that three-dimensional space, right? So it's going to scan across this top edge here, and it needs to have the -35 and -10 on the same side in order to find it. Okay? So if you move the promoter to a -10 and -25, so now the -25 is down here, the sigma factor will never be able to recognize that promoter. It has to be spaced in this way because of the three-dimensional reality of what a double helix DNA looks like. Okay?
When you say negative or -10 sequence, does that mean it starts on the 10 from, you know what I mean? Or does
Yep.
it not really matter that much?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So yeah, -10, like that thing there, the whole thing is a -10, but this technically is the -10.
Okay.
And then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yep. But when we talk about it, the colloquialism is that this whole thing is called the -10. But yeah, good question. Okay? Okay, are we good on what the spacing ends up being critical? The other thing that's critical, and we talked about this before, and we've answered this, so it at least should make some sense. It's important that the -10 is AT rich, because the -10 is where the melting of the DNA is going to occur first. You can see that down here. This is the transcription complex beginning to unwind, and that's important then that the -10 has T and A base pairs because we talked about this a couple times. Why is it important that there's TA base pairs there as opposed to GCs? Because there's less hydrogen bonds, they're easier to melt. Okay? So these AT base pairs will melt first, and that's what you want. And notice that you have to start the process of transcription here upstream so that you can actually begin transcription right here. This is where the polymerase is going to be poised and bind, and then it's going to start transcription right downstream from where it's bound. Okay?
Why do we even need the negative or -35?
Yep, because the -10 isn't discriminatory enough. So there's going to be a lot of sequences that have that, but the two of them together define what a promoter. So you need to have not more than just 5 base pairs saying that you're going to find that sequence a lot. So you need to have something that says, no, this really is a promoter. Right? So, yep.
Is that +1 like the same thing as the thing in the paper?
Yes, TSS. This is TSS. Transcription start site.
So are the 10 and 35 together a promoter? Or
Yes.
Okay.
The two of them define the promoter.
And the promoter is not like a physical thing, it's just kind of like a region of DNA that's called the promoter.
Right. Physical in the sense that it's these two sequences, but yes, it's a region of DNA. So basically what the promoter says is, if you, and like, so, is it next? All right, so let's go here and I'll go back one. But this is what DNA looks like. I mean, at least in this form, right? It's, in a cell, it looks wildly awesomer than this. But so this is what polymerases look at all the time. They get a whole lot of sequences, but somewhere in this mess, there's a promoter, right? So do you have the answers, right? Does your slides print out? Does it show you where the answers are?
Yeah, the next slide.
Yeah, and the next slide it shows it. All right, so you can, if you want to cheat, you can cheat, and, you know, whatever. You know, so, so why don't you pretend to be a sigma factor? See if you can find a -10 and -35. Because really what a promoter is doing is just saying, in the mass of all this DNA, there is a gene coming next, right? So promoters act as flags to wave to say, there's a gene. Right downstream of where I'm at, there's a gene. So we need polymerases here so that we can actually transcribe this thing, right? But there's a host of DNA sequences that there's no genes in whatsoever, right? So promoters just act as a region with DNA that then says, there's a gene close to me, downstream, right down here, right? So just acting as a note for the polymerases, okay? So we're not spending long, but and if you want to get help, you certainly can. But what I would do is look for the -10 first. That sequence is pretty easy. TAAT, TATAAT. See if you can find something like that. Remember, it's not going to be perfect, but see if you can find something that looks like that, and then go upstream and see if you can find a -35 that looks like that. Okay? Okay, go.
What line is
So each section is in bases of 10. Right, so this goes 101, 112, 121, 131, 141, 151.
That's what I thought.
35, so you go 15, no, 25
Okay, so let me show you answers. So TATAAA. So remember, no promoters. Well, very few promoters will be perfect, right? Just like you guys are not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm the best I can be. Same thing with these promoters. So perfect is TATAAT. This one's close to that. And then if you go up 25 base pairs, so so there's 10, there's 15. Well, if you go from here, it would be like 10, 20, 5, right? So spacing being critical between -10, -35. So 10, 20, 5. So the spacing is correct, and it's TTGACA, which is actually perfect, right, as far as the -35 sequence goes. All right, so there's your -10, -35, and then if you go downstream from that, the +1 is going to be, so this is -10, it means that this thing is +1. Okay, so the transcription start site's here, and notice that I also boxed the start codon. Yep.
Do we need to know that's no? Okay.
So is this, could I give you a piece of DNA and say, define find the promoter, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
What would be, but I could give you a transcript. So, I don't think I would do that. No, that would be ridiculous. But I could give you a transcript and start saying where would the +1 be, where is that? Yes, in some ways, not like this though. But you should still be able to apply all these concepts that we're talking about. All right, so this guy here, ATG, this is the start codon for translation. Okay, so just note to yourself, this is something that it gets confused often, is that I think because people assume that translation, or making a protein is the most important thing, that somehow is the first DNA base that will be transcribed. Notice that there is a long section of DNA here, where this +1 is here. Notice that there's at least 20, 30 bases that are transcribed that are never translated. With me? Right? And that should make sense. And so I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I think it's important. So this is the message RNA here, 5' 3 prime, what we're seeing is that the ATG, which is the first base, or the first codon that will produce a methionine, right, for the first amino acid. There's what this section of the RNA is called is the 5' UTR, the untranslated region. Right, so there's always this 5' UTR, and there's also a 3' UTR. Right, there's a stop codon here. But there's these 2 sections of the RNA that are not involved in making a protein. Okay? Where we're headed is that we're going to talk about the processing of message RNA. So there has to be things that are done with these 2 things that help in the function for the mRNA itself.
Could you point that out on that diagram?
Yep. The 5' UTR is here. This is +1. So this whole thing is a 5' UTR. Because this is the first base of translation. So one thing that you can imagine is that there has to be what is called a ribosome binding site, an RBS. Right? Is if you're going to have this transcript go through translation, there has to be some binding site for the ribosome. Right? So the ribosome, there has to be a binding site for that, for it to position itself to start translation here. So the ribosome binding site is analogous to what for transcription? So this is one of those classic GRE questions. If ribosome is to, or RBS is to translation as blank is to transcription. Promoter. Okay? So now the structure is that the ribosome needs a site to be able to start translation. The site that starts transcription is the promoter. Okay? See all the this is like little the Matryoshka dolls, like there's a big doll, then a small doll, then a little doll. Like this is all, everything is similar. It's just we have different language for all last parts of them. Okay? Okay. Not that you care, but I care because I love this stuff. So the ribosome binding site is right here. The ribosome binding sites are GGAGG. So you see it? GGAGG. That's the ribosome binding site. So all of these things have consensus sequences, and if you look in the sequences, you will find them. They're there all the time. Okay. All right. So we talked about this, but let's just kind of zoom back through it. So this is a sigma factor, right? We said that the sigma factor's job is to bind the promoter. Its job also is to begin the melting of the promoter, right? So you see that the sigma factor is beginning to melt the -10, right? And then that melting allows the RNA polymerase to begin the process of transcription. Okay? Notice that the polymerase is directly positioned to start right here. The front part of the polymerase, which is where the active site is going to be, is directly positioned at the +1. Which is exactly what you want. Okay. And then we said once this thing begins to elongate, the sigma factor will dissociate, right? Because the only job of the sigma factor is to bind the -10, -35, and once it does that, it cannot just slide along DNA or DNA. Like it's just not, it can't do it. This RNA polymerase has a general affinity for DNA, but not specific. Right? So it will interact with DNA, but it's not looking for any particular DNA sequence. That's not true for the sigma. It binds specifically to a promoter element and not just any random sequence. Okay?
Does the sigma factor bind first and then
Yes.
the enzyme?
Yeah, so it's showing you both of them, but technically, yes, the sigma factor will bind first and then recruit the polymerase to the promoter.
What's the PPP?
PPP, that is, what is that referring to?
Polypeptide performance.
I don't know what PPP is.
So it doesn't matter.
Well, I guess if I don't know, I suppose I can't make a question on it, so, yes.
Okay.
But if someone could find out, I would appreciate, I don't know what that is. I have no clue. Yeah. There you go. I'll, yeah. Let me know if you find out. I will look, but I don't know if I'll remember to look either. Okay. I can't even make up something. Usually I can make up something, but I don't even know what to make up at this point. Okay. All right, so do you want to practice this? Do you want to practice using these terms?
Yes.
All right, so label upstream, downstream, +1, -1, and throw in RBS in there as well. Oh, and throw in 5' UTR, 3' UTR. So, right? So, but where I'm hearing a lot of confusion is the UTR stuff. So let me take one more run at that. All right, so the 5' UTR, untranslated region, is this space here, right? So let me go back to that. Let me go back to my drawing here. Okay. Can everyone see this? You can see back about ish, a little. Can you, Emerson, flip the light for me? Better? Okay. All right, so message RNA, 5' to 3'. So let's label some stuff. This first. And, okay, ATG. Okay, so this region here, this is the +1, right? First base that's transcribed. This is the +1 or the TSS, according to our paper. Okay? This region here is the 5' UTR. Okay, so this region is transcribed, but not translated. Okay? Things that you find in the 5' UTR. You find the ribosome binding site. This, I guess, this would be the 5' cap, which we'll talk about, but we're not there yet. Right? But this is in between where transcription starts, where translation starts. Okay? So the ribosome binding site would be downstream of the +1, but upstream of the initiating codon. Okay? 3' UTR would be downstream of the stop codon and upstream of the PPP, which we all know is the triphosphate cap, or the tail, right? Where that was up here.
Oh, doesn't that go on the head of it?
That goes, sorry, my bad. Totally awkward. So this goes up here. And this is what goes on the 3'?
That bunch of A's.
Yeah, poly A tail. Sweet. But we haven't even gotten there yet, but that's where we're headed. So I'm just putting more terms out there to further confuse you.
That's super helpful.
Thanks, no problem. Check. Okay? All right. What? Questions?
Can you show where transcription starts and translation starts again?
Yep. So not shown down here. DNA so this is after transcription is done. You have a transcript. So transcription would start here, the +1. It's the very first base of transcription, which you can see from the DNA is downstream of the promoter element. Okay, so the other thing that sometimes I try to confuse you with on tests and exams, and we already had this conversation up top, is that the -10, where is that in the mRNA transcript?
It's not.
It's not. Right, so a lot, you will start to look for it. You're like, oh, where is that thing? I don't even know. I don't know. It's probably right here, right? So just make sure that you keep track, right? The -10 is the promoter. That is not transcribed, right? It's downstream. The promoter is upstream of when transcription starts. Transcription starts at +1, -10, -35. Those are base pairs that are upstream from transcription. They're never transcribed. Okay? So translation, and this is where we'll get to eventually someday. We'll start here at the ATG, and the ribosome binding site is where the ribosome will bind to center it, so it'll actually start where it needs to be. there's a lot.
Wait, can you say that again?
Yep. Translation will start here at the ATG. The ribosome binding site will be the spot where the ribosome will bind so that it will position itself to begin at the first base. Just,
Keep going.
just like the promoter was up here, so that it could begin transcription right here. But you have to have a binding site for the thing before it actually starts.
Okay.
It's going to
So
position
the-
it right in line to make sure it starts the right place. Melissa.
So the triphosphate tail, so was that, is
Oh.
that still in there somewhere?
Careful, that's my bad. So so leave that for now. We're going to talk about how the mRNAs are processed. Remember, there's a 5' cap and a poly A tail, and those things help protect the message, the transcript from being degraded in the cell. So, but we haven't gotten there yet, although we're kind of there now. Yep, Levi.
So translation doesn't start directly at that +1 and
Right, it does not.
farther.
It's farther downstream. Okay.
So the ATG is the first spot where it's transcribed.
Wrong word. Trans.
Why was it on there before the ribosomes?
This
Okay.
ATG is the first place where translation will occur. This base here, the +1, is the first base that was transcribed. This is the beginning of transcription. This is where translation will begin.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so back to Levi's question, then I'm going to move on. So this is strategic, right? Is that the most important thing of the message is the protein code, right? The whole point of the message is that you produce a protein, okay? So the places where the RNA is most susceptible to damage or to be degraded are the ends, right? So it's not by accident that the message that's important is in the middle. And it's not by accident that we put a 5' cap and a 3' tail on it. Both of those things serve as buffers so that if the RNA is being degraded, it doesn't degrade the message which is intact in the middle. Okay? So that's why we don't see translation starting right here. Because that, if you lose even one base, then your message is now altered. And this is what we call a frame shift mutation. That causes all sorts of whack, bad things. Okay? Caitlin?
So there's 2 UTRs.
Yes, there's a 5' UTR and a 3' UTR.
So
Precious, that phase.
that circle is a protein or it's a ribosome?
Where? This thing?
In the middle.
This was me pretending to be you circling the -10 incorrectly.
Oh, okay, never mind. So we have a ribosome that attaches to the strand.
Yep, ribosome will attach to the ribosome binding site and begin translation here.
Okay.
This is chapter 7. This is where we're headed. We're not there today, so don't worry about that yet. But I want to give you a preview.
So is the ATG in the 5' UTR or is it after it?
That is the first thing that is not the UTR, right? Because the UTR stands for the translated region. ATG is translated, so it can't be part of the UTR.
So it's the first thing that is translated.
That is the first thing that is translated. Okay. Well, that was painful. Are we okay?
It's not fuzzy.
Oh, then that's good. So I'm glad that we're there.
clear.
Yeah. Okay. So are we? Wow. We're never gonna get out of this. Okay. So it's okay. We're just like we have to be close to it. No, we're not close. No. Okay. Right? No, we're not close. Okay. So. Yeah, we're not close. Okay.
15 minutes or 12 slides, you can do it.
No, I'm not doing that. That would be bad. Okay, so let's go here. What do I want to tell you? Okay, so we've talked about transcription initiation. This is talking about transcription termination. Okay? So, so just this is the crappy or challenging part of this exam, is that I think when you think of termination, you're going to go towards what? Well, tell me, what do you